So it seems like this conversation around the industry moving towards an all digital future when it comes to perceived game ownership continues to get worse and worse, mostly as different things happen in the gaming industry that kind of make people realize, oh, this might not be the best thing for the consumer when it comes to owning different games, or people say game preservation, that sort of thing. And we had another one of those moments happen this week, and I wanted to go over that as well as multiple other things that I think are eventually going to play into a position where you really don't have any ownership at all over these games. And I'm curious what people's thoughts are on a future like that. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure that like button and subscribe if you're new. So I will say up front, I don't believe that future is in the next, I'm going to say 15 years. I'm thinking like well into the future. However, of course, there will be steps to kind of get to that really end goal that I think a lot of publishers and platform holders have right now. But this sort of started this week when Stellar Blade got a demo. And what happened was it just appeared on the PlayStation Store. And of course, there are different accounts that follow all the different listings that happen on the PlayStation database, and they'll post about it on X. And this happened. People then saw that there was the page that went live with the demo, and they started downloading it. The demo is about 90 minutes, gives you at least a quick look at Stellar Blade itself, the gameplay, different outfits, a little bit of the story, and apparently the save data transfers over. That's really cool. And in fact, it appears that demo is most likely being set up to go live maybe this week coming up. I feel like what's going to happen is Sony and Shift Up, who's making it, wants to have a release for the demo, maybe a trailer, and then definitely like a PlayStation blog release, kind of detailing some more parts about the game, as of course they work up towards that April release. It makes sense all the way around. Hey, let me tell you about the game a bit. Oh yeah, and now you can go play like a good chunk of it, an hour and a half. Okay, that sounds cool. But as the game did go live, people downloaded it and they got a chance to play it, until Sony decided you couldn't play it anymore. So, of course, when you download something, you basically get the license added to your account, your profile, and from there, you can download the game, delete it, re-download it, right, because you have the ownership, quote-unquote, of it. And really, it's not necessarily ownership. It's, what did Microsoft call it?
You can buy our game once. You're going to get play across Xbox and Windows. I think we're the only platform that does this. That makes it possible for you not only to play with your friends wherever they are, but to know that you actually have multiple entitlements to the games. I think that's a technology I would love to see applied to more platforms.
Oh, right. Entitlement. That's a word you're going to hear a lot more going forward now. But essentially, Sony decided to flip a switch and turn off your entitlement to the demo, even though you had technically downloaded it, had the license added to your library. And what happened was people had sort of this aha moment of, oh, they can do that? Yeah, technically they can. And I mean, if you think about it, if your account gets banned for whatever reason, I'm sure if the old days of Call of Duty, those lobbies came back, there'd be a lot of entitlements that would get thrown into the wind, because when your account gets banned, well, you also lose basically all these different games that you purchased. And this is something that's also been brought up. Should they be able to do that? Well, technically, the thing we're running into now, and one thing that does concern me going towards this future, is there's not a lot of guardrails really that are put in place for regulations around how these different companies can act and respond and really run these digital marketplaces that are not that old. If you think about it, they really came around in midway through the Xbox 360 and PS3 generations. So we're probably about 13 years or so where we had these digital marketplaces that we could rely on for full game purchases day and date when they would release. And now we're kind of looking around going, okay, well, what happens when we get into an era where it's all digital, as in there's no physical copies at all? Well, when you start to see threads like these pop up where people are losing access to the digital licenses, and people need to be talking about it, with 2,900 upvotes over on PlayStation's own subreddit. And I went over this briefly in Newswave, and I decided to bring it up again because I had a couple of people message me and said, yeah, that happened to me. In fact, I'm trying to figure it out. And the concerning thing right now is Sony does not appear to know what to do. Like, they're kind of trying to figure this out themselves right now. And it seems to, by the way, be some kind of bug that exists currently when it comes to the ownership of those licenses or entitlements. When something like apparently Helldivers 2 has an error and you restore your licenses, it kind of forgets about all of the licenses you had prior to that time. So, like, back to even the PlayStation 3 generation, it's just gone. And then, of course, we do have delistings that happen, and that's not a new thing. That's been going on for a while, whether it's licensing with some of the companies that are involved, or, like, for example, car games, when they get the rights to certain car brands and manufacturers, those run up. Are you really going to renew those and pay more money for a game that's probably years and years out of date? No, you're just going to delist it, and technically people who do have ownership of that game can re-download it, but that's something we really haven't had tested over the course of multiple decades. Recently, we had the situation with WB and Adult Swim games where a whole bunch of them are just being delisted completely. Over on delistedgames.com, they have this list showing it off with Death's Gambit, Samurai Jack, Battle Through Time, Fist Puncher, and more that will basically just disappear off of storefronts. And apparently some of these developers will have at least the opportunity to relist these games, but without any kind of fan content, reviews, or anything from the history of these just being on digital storefronts. Some of the developers behind these games have spoken out around some of the frustrations trying to get the game ownership transferred over. So, for example, Matt Lewandowski kind of talked about this with Fist Puncher, how they were just outright denied by WB's representative when it came to the idea of transferring the ownership over. The developer behind Small Radios, Big Televisions, that being Owen Deary, saying, when you're working with purely digital products, nothing is going to stay around for very long. And it's just incredible how much control the publisher has in an instance where it is just a digital product like this. And I feel like we're going to see more and more cases like this popping up, continue to demonstrate that. And here's what I think the end game is for a lot of these big publishers, because I'm trying to figure out reasons why they wouldn't want the industry to get to this position. And that's just cloud streaming. And you might say, well, I've tried it before. It's not great. And I will say the vast majority of these cloud services are just, they're not up to what you can get from a native experience. But they're getting closer. And in fact, GeForce Now is shockingly good. Like, NVIDIA has done some incredible stuff here. And I've mentioned convenience for digital, and that's one of the reasons so many people seem to be gravitating in that direction. We see it all the time from these different reports from Sony, Nintendo, kind of Microsoft, but look, we sort of figure Microsoft is already wading into just the all digital side of things, considering there is a digital Xbox Series X that is being rumored, and I kind of feel like that would replace the current Series X, so they wouldn't have a system on the market with a disk drive at all. But GeForce Now is incredibly convenient. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're traveling, you don't have your PC with you, of course, your desktop, it's just at home, and maybe you end up at a friend's house, hours and hours away for some kind of event or something, you're staying over, and you want to play a game. Well, the thing I noticed with GeForce Now is they do have like their monthly stuff. They have like, you can subscribe monthly. They do have their free section that's like 1 hour session length, ad supported. They also have the day pass, which I saw that and even I was like, well, that's actually pretty cool. It's an ultimate day, $8. And you have access to an RTX 4080 rig. They also have 8-hour play sessions, up to 4K resolution, up to 120 FPS, and no ads. So for $8, you can play for pretty much the good part of the day and have a really good experience, because the latency for GeForce Now, the picture quality, it is, again, shockingly good, and they're pretty close to that native experience, believe it or not. And the day we end up as just streaming for games is the day that publishers and platform holders have ultimate and complete control over everything then. Because think about it this way, there's no there's no ownership then technically or entitlement, as while you can sure buy something there on the marketplace, it never exists on your system. And if it's delisted, it can technically then be pulled off of their servers with the entitlements. And I guess that would also mean in your quote unquote library. Again, the issue we have right now is we don't really know what the rules are for it. That's just for the digital era now. I do wonder about the streaming era. And I feel like we're roughly 15 years off from that. Like, I'm thinking 2040 we would see that happen. But the fact that we see Microsoft, Sony, NVIDIA really pushing with technology, and a lot of these big publishers like EA, Ubisoft, they're 100% on board, because in their mind they would then remove the barrier that is a console or PC, to where you can spend $8, buy a game and play it all day on this ultimate day pass, or pay like $10, $12 a month and just have access through streaming. But if a delisting happens for a game and there's no physical copy and it was never something you would download anyway, that game would just technically go away, be snapped out of existence. And I see that with a lot of things for music, like licensing on that. And then, of course, things like cars or different brands that would utilize that. Now, I do wonder what would be the fix here for people who don't want to see physical media going away and moving into a digital and then eventually a streaming era. I don't really know what the solve would be, because I feel like the people who want physical media are buying now anyway, and it doesn't seem to be enough because it's still being overtaken by the digital era. Now, I do think there would be more of a pushback for an all streaming era, but I do wonder if, as generations continue to basically turn over and we have the next generation of gamers come in and they're more used to playing on their cell phones, their tablets that maybe does utilize streaming, if we'll eventually have the same thing happen, but it's the digital gamers who are like, we don't want streaming, then eventually that overtakes it. Again, I'm speculating and looking far off in the distance over entitlement being taken away for a demo for Stellar Blade. But I've watched this happen, and many of you have, where it was all physical for a while, then it's like, oh, a little bit of digital. Okay, no, now digital's overtaking, but don't worry, they can't remove stuff out of your digital library, to then things like PT happening where it's removed and delisted. And now we see things like the demo entitlement being taken away, and people realize that these publishers have a lot more control than they thought. And here we are now. So it's going to be an interesting 10 to 15 years coming up for gaming, especially if the next generation gets here with the PlayStation 6 and the Xbox XXX, and there's no disk drive on them. That's it. We're going all digital then, and there's not a lot gamers can do because there just won't be a disk drive. But let me know what you guys think about all of this down below. Are you concerned about the direction when it comes to the digital side of things, the streaming side of things? And were you one of the people who was surprised that something like Stellar Blade, the demo, can just be removed out of your library pretty much in the snap of a finger? Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.